Okay, in this video what we're going to do is look at finishing this game. So this game has taken us quite a bit of time to do. So you can imagine it's nice when we start getting towards the end of it. So we probably only have this lesson and one more to maybe just finish, complete it all up. So what we have here is we've got the questions, we've got the multiple choice answers, and if I did, for example, the next button, it's going to the next question, it's recording all of these things. I need to take these print statements out. I don't want them printing this information. This was just for testing purposes. But you can see no score has been added, okay? And of course, when we get to the end of the questions, in my case, I've only got 5 questions. When I get to the end, it actually just keeps on going. So if I do that, it keeps on going saying there's game over here. Now, what we will want to do is change that. Okay. Now, the other thing we can notice, if I just run the game again, there's a couple of things that we might see here. If I pick an option, press next. Okay, so I think it's working fine actually where it changes it back off that. That's okay. Right, so let's get started. What we're going to do is, first of all, under our global variables, we're going to create a few more variables that we're going to need to use. So global variables, these means that they're accessible in any of our procedures or functions, right? So every procedure functions like this, this everything that has a def for define, and this bit like that. Okay, that's a procedure or function. These global variables are accessible, but you can't update them unless you do this global. Right? And that means if I want to update Q count within display question, I need to do this global, right? So let's look at what we're going to add. So we're going to add actual answer, right? So what the actual answer to a question is, and we'll just leave it at 0 for the moment. And then you can just put a comment saying that is an integer data type. And another one we will do will be user's answer. Now we kind of have that already, but we'll just do this instead because we have this down. If you notice, button pressed, we've got answer, and this is essentially the answer that you've picked. So when you press button A, it translates to 1, and then you press button 2 and it translates to 2 and 3 and 4. Okay, so we're going to want to then compare actual answer to user's answer. So we will have to get the actual answer and store that into this variable, and then get the user's answer. And then one other one that we want to do would be the score. Now, we've actually used score, the word score, for our label. So this variable, we can't really use the same thing. So I'm just going to call it points instead. Now, the reason that this is a global variable as well, because what will happen is when you start the game, points will start as 0. Okay, so let's get started. Where do we go from here? Well, the first couple of things that we might need to do is get the actual answer. So in display question, we've got global Q count use questions, and we can just add on to the end of that actual answer. So what we want to do is actually update actual answer from being 0 to whatever the actual answer is. Now the actual answer is, if you imagine, or you remember, when you open up your questions, you have the actual answer at the end. So the answer is number 1 here, number 3 here, number 4, 1, 2, and so on for all your questions. So it's the last one. Now we looked at that before. We got this bit of information and it says 5. So we had 2, which was the question, or sorry, 1 was the question. Here was the first possible answer, second, third, fourth possible answer, and then the next one on that would be the actual answer, which would be just that number. So what we want to do is add something in here. So we've got this Q count, we've got this print Q count. We don't really need this print Q count anymore. Take that away. We don't need that print used questions either, so we can take that away, but we can add actual answer. So I'm going to just copy that, put it down here, and say actual answer is equal to, and then I'm just going to copy this data random Q5, paste that there, and change it to 6. Okay, so that is the index of 6. So if I go back to my questions, just have a look at that, you can see that number 1 is index 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so it is the 6th one, and that's why that is a 6 there. Okay, this random queue, as you know, is randomly generating the question. So we're going to use the same random queue here, so it's going to tell us which question it is and then get the index of that answer. Okay, so we've got the answer. Now what we want to do is check that answer. Now remember, because we've done this global, and we did global and added it into here, that meant that we could update actual answer to whatever the answer is. So whenever display question gets run, it's no longer 0, it is whatever the answer to the first question is, right? Because we've done this, okay? So we're going to create another sort of procedure here, and this one we will just call check answer, right? So I'm just going to write check answer, open and close brackets, and then I'm going to get one global in here. So first of all, we'll do a comment. It's usually good practice. As you can see, I've always written a comment sort of explaining what this does more or less. Okay, so check answer will check the answer and increment the points or score, let's say. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is get the points so that we can update it. So I'm going to do global again, right? So global and pick points, and then we just do a simple if. So we're going to say if actual answer. Now you notice I didn't put actual answer in here because in actual fact, actual answer is accessible without writing global in front of it. So it's accessible, but I can't change it. Now the reason I did global points is because I do want to change it, because global points is currently 0, and if I want to increment it, I need to do global points in here. Okay, so if I then do a selection statement, so this is if. Now I'm going to do if actual answer, actual answer there, right? So leave a couple of lines. Actual answer, if that is equal to, and we need to get user's answer. Okay, so the user answer, we already have that here, the user's answer, but we don't have the actual answer from that the person's put. So that would be here. So whenever somebody's playing your game, we have the button press and it would be 1, 2, 3, 4. We can just get that down here. So what we'll do underneath this that will change the color of your text for your buttons. We can just write global users answer, and then we will then do users answer is equal to this answer, right? So I know it sounds a little bit weird. Oops, did it kind of wrong there. So what I'm doing is using just another variable. So this answer here, which is 1, 2, 3, or 4, we're checking it. Okay, so it is variable, but it's a local variable, so it's only within button press. So we're just using a different variable as a global one, which will then be updated to whatever the answer is pressed for that question. Okay, so now we've got that. You can see here I don't have to write global user's answer because I'm not updating it, I'm just checking it. So actual answer, I haven't included it here, and user answer I won't as well, so I've just got user's answer there. Okay, so just check that spelling was right. User's answer, yeah. Okay, so that's that done. So that's my if. So what I want to do if the actual answer is equal to user's answer, I want to increment points. So I've got points which is equal to 0 at the minute, so I'm going to do points plus equals 1. Now, this is increments, okay? So this is exactly the same as saying points is equal to points plus 1. It's the same as doing that. So points is equal to itself plus 1, but it is just a short way of doing it. Points plus equals 1. Okay, so this is increment points by 1. Okay. Now, after that, what we probably want to do is just make sure we test it. So we want to print the points. So print points just to see if it works. And then what we can do is actually increment the score. Now, the score has not been made as a global yet, so we can't necessarily access it up here. So what we're going to do is go down to GUI, and I'll just say down there that it's score. Add that on to the end of all the ones that we've made globals. Okay, so score is somewhere. Where is it? Here it is here, right? So this is my score, this bit with the label, and we're going to change the text equals score 0 to score whatever points is. Okay, so under check answer again, we'll try that. So we'll do score.config, so this will reconfigure it, and then we will reconfigure the text of it. So what we need to do is say that we want that in quotes, and we want it to still say the word score, but then we want to add points. Now you can't just write points in here, because then what will it do? It'll write score points. So we want to use this variable. So there's several ways of doing this. One quick way to do it would be to use the percentage sign and S, and then after we would then do percentage sign and then put the variable. So this variable will go in this space, essentially. That's what it's doing. Okay, looks a little bit weird when you see it, but for the first time, but essentially this variable, whatever it happens to be, whether it's 0 or it's 1 or it's 2 or 3, will get put into here. Okay, so after that, we probably want to reset our buttons. So we've got reset buttons here. We can just run that underneath here. Done. Oops, left out the R. Reset buttons. And then we want to maybe display another question. So we've got display question up here. And try that down there. Display question. So it'll display another question. Now, what I'm thinking about is this check answer, when has it been run? It's never been run, okay? We're not actually doing anything with it at the minute. It's not happening. So when do we want it to happen? Well, let's think about it. If I run my program and I press start, when do I want it to happen? So when I press start, that ran display question. Okay, so I would check a question, and then I'm pressing next. So the next button is actually the one that wants to check if that question that I just answered was correct, change the score, and then display another question. So I do have the display question here, which is fine. I've got the reset buttons, but I'm not running this check answer. So it's the next button that wants to do this. So instead of next button running display, I need to go down to next button, and you see, yeah, here it is, next button here. and it is currently command equals display question, so I want to change that to check answer instead, right? So if I go further down, you can see that I've got my hide start. So the start button runs hide start then destroys that button or hides it, and then runs display question. So that's what happens at the very beginning of the game. And then when I display a question, which is this bit here, then I press the next button after answering a question, and it checks this answer and then runs another question. And then the next time I press next, it will do this check answer again. Okay, so let's see if it works this time. And I also want to check what is happening. I printed out points, so I want to check if that works, right? So first question, what does RAM stand for? So RAM is your memory on a computer. It is random access memory. Next. Okay, so look, I've got a problem here. It is not working. Why is it not working? It's kind of like it's frozen. It's not doing anything. So we need to work it out. It hasn't got any issues that's come up here. I'm assuming what it might be, and this is just because of experience, that there's something wrong with this if statement here. And it's probably to do with the fact that actual answer, if I think actual answer is coming from a text file, so this data, if you remember what data is our read file. Read file, anything that you get from a text file is a string. User's answer is not a string, it is an integer. So I'm just going to do int on actual answer, like that. And I'm going to run the program again. And fingers crossed, we get this working. The operating system is system software. Okay, it works. Got a point, 1 point there. Computer hardware is all of the above. Got 2 points. I'm pretty good at this game. I'm going to answer the wrong question to see. So I'm going to put random actual memory, which is wrong. Okay, so when I press next, it doesn't do anything here. So what's the problem with it? The problem is that I've got the wrong question and it's not going on to the next question, right? So if I do the right question answer, it then lets me follow on. Now the reason for that is hard to figure out again, but because of experience, I have to think of, well, what was it that was, when I pressed the next, what was it doing? It was doing this bit. So I can diagnose that when I press that next, if I answer the wrong question, so I'll just run the program one more time and have a look at that. So if I do utility software, press next, okay, so it's not working. So the next button is doing this check. So I know it's this check answer. And essentially it is because these two reset buttons and display question are only happening if this is true. If this selection statement is true, if int actual answer is equal to user's answer, then it does this. So in actual fact, I don't want these two to happen within this if. So I'm going to just press backspace 1 and backspace 1 there, so that it'll happen always. So what will happen is we will check answer. If the answer is correct, it'll increment the points like this. We can take print points away actually, because we know that bit works. So we increment the points, we change the score, and then we will reset buttons and display question. If the question is wrong, it'll check this. The question's not right, so it won't do these two things, and it'll go on and just do these. So these are kind of some of the harder problems that you can get in programming, because you notice that we didn't get any error messages in our shell here. So you can sometimes be a little bit lost of what to do, but what you've got to remind yourself is it's something to do with the last thing that you've been working on, or what this button actually does, right? So files are organized into directories. Got a point. two types of networks are WAN and LAN, wide area network and local area network, but I'm going to write Peter and Pan. Okay, so it worked now that it's gone on to another question, but I've only still got 1 point. So I've done 2 questions, answered 1 correct, 1 wrong. Let's see, system software. Okay, so now I've got 2 points. I had 3 questions. I'm going to pick this one. Okay, so it was wrong. Random access memory, correct. There you go. So I've done all 5 questions that I have, and then it said game over here. Now, the game over is not essentially what you want to do. You don't want to have it in your cell saying game over. We would want something to come up here telling us game over. We've got several choices. You could either display it in here. Once you got to the end of the question, you just display it here, and you want to display the score, or you could make another label that would appear and go right over on top of this, right on top, which would display well done, you know, and this kind of thing. And then what we could do is reset the quiz. Do you want to play again? Reset. If not, you can close the app or something like that, right? So we could do that as our last video for this quiz program.